We begin with a new deal between Ottawa and Alberta to build more homes across the province. It includes millions in funding from the Canadian government.
Over the next 8 years, the Canadian government will invest more than $510 million through the Canada Housing Infrastructure Fund to help communities across Alberta build and, when necessary, upgrade essential drinking water, wastewater, stormwater, solid waste infrastructure, all of which is needed to build more homes in this province faster.
I'm joined now by Alberta Liberal MP Corey Hogan. He's also Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Energy and Natural Resources. Corey, thanks for coming on. It's nice to see you.
Yeah, good to see you.
I'd like to ask, if I may, about the location choice. You chose to make this decision, your government chose to make this decision in Red Deer. Red Deer was where Alberta slammed your government over the decision to pull back the Housing Accelerator Fund grant earlier this year. Is that because you're setting this deal up to try to offset some of that? Like, does some of those funds offset what would have been in the Housing Accelerator Fund?
Well, the deal that was announced today is $513 million that helps cities everywhere in Alberta grow. The main reason the Prime Minister was there is because, you know, we want to make sure we're everywhere in Alberta. Calgary and Edmonton are important cities. I obviously am pretty fond of one of them. But look, there's a lot more to the province than that. And the PM was out there to make this announcement because this is an announcement that affects and supports everyone. In fact, 20% of this funding is set aside for rural, North and Indigenous communities as well.
I get that, and I don't want to sort of belabor the point, but the Housing Accelerator Fund had its issues for sure. I know Toronto and Vaughan had some issues with like the restrictions or the requirements they had to meet. A lot of cities felt they were too high. Is there something about the conditions in that need to be rethought, or does this new program and programs that are coming like it in provinces across the country, does it sort of offset some of those concerns?
No, I think these programs are complementary. Red Deer did benefit from the Housing Accelerator Fund. The $3 million that they spent before the deal was terminated, they got to keep. We thought that was a pragmatic approach. But of course, it is in our interest to make sure that parties to deals are honoring those deals. And look, we all have the same goal. It's to get houses built. Alberta's done a pretty good job of that, generally speaking. I'm sitting here in Calgary, and in the last year, rents are down. Average rent's $100 a month. Housing prices are down. It's because we're building more. And this is building on that momentum because we know there's a lot more work to do on that front.
There is a lot more work to do. And it's not just the federal money, which is a pile of money. There's a bunch of money coming from the province as well. Is this kind of the model, though, of what you're looking for in provinces across the country?
Well, I think so, in the sense that it's governments working together to get things done for citizens. And if there's a word that's going to define this government, it's pragmatic. We're going to set goals and we're going to get the things done that need to be done, whether it's building houses or tackling some of the biggest challenges of the day, like climate change, like building our economy, you name it. We're going to work with people and we're going to make that happen.
The questions at the news conference quickly pivoted to all kinds of other issues, including trade, because the government's top trade negotiators are in Washington. We're just 3 weeks away from those new 50% tariffs going into effect. The Prime Minister was asked, he's asked if he would be willing to use energy, which is, of course, incredibly important to people in your riding in your province, whether he'd be willing to use energy as a bargaining chip. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
Being a reliable supplier is important. Canadians are reliable. Canadians can be trusted. When you're a supplier of a key commodity, key service, you got to think really hard about not supplying. So that very much colors it. So look, this is incredibly diverse country, economy. We have many things we can do. First and foremost is to work towards an agreement. That's what we're going to do. But there's other things we can do if we needed to.
So I guess on the one hand, what are those other things? But is the effort to remain reliable and trusted, is that weakening Canada's bargaining position?
No, not at all. I think that what the Prime Minister said is spot on. You got to think with things like energy, with things like food. This isn't like a hypothetical thing or, oh, geez, all of a sudden my new computer's more expensive. This is literally life and death stuff. This is the stuff that runs the economy. But there's a huge opportunity that the United States sees, and there's a huge need that the United States needs to have more energy going to the United States. And while, of course, we're interested in diversifying, we don't want to be beholden to one market. The reality is the United States faces the same pressures as the rest of the Western world of more energy demand forecast for the future. And if they want to meet that demand with with Canadian energy, that's the bargaining chip, Peter. That is how you move things forward.
And I hear you on that, and I've heard people make that exact same argument, but it feels like we didn't use it for any leverage. They resurrected the Keystone XL pipeline, and it just sort of went ahead without much ballyhoo at all. Are there ways in which we can leverage that ability to increase our exports to the United States in terms of energy as a point that might help nudge these negotiations along?
Well, there's a few things I would point out. One is that we had fully permitted KXL on the Canadian side years ago. So there wasn't a government action pending on that particular front, and that was an activity that had been underway for quite some time. The second is that KXL, while it is a nice piece of infrastructure, it certainly would allow more product to get to the United States. That's not enough to meet the kind of demand that I'm talking about. To meet the demand I'm talking about, we're talking about a step change in some of this support. And look, it would be great if Canadians provide that, because we generate oil and gas at the highest environmental and social standards. There's a lot of reason to believe that as a supplier of choice, we could really make positive impacts in a lot of different ways, economically for us, environmentally for the world. But it's not so simple, I guess, is what I would say. And KXL is there. It is not flowing oil yet. But again, to the PM's point, we're not going to be the people who say we're going to do it. No, we're not going to do it. That cuts against Canada's brand. That hurts us not just with the United States, but with all trading partners.
I mean, that has been the position of this government going back 15 years. There has been an issue around reliability and around stability of energy exports. I get him saying that we need to remain reliable and trusted. Are we making enough ground on that? Like, does the world see us yet? Or are they still looking and saying, all right, take a few more steps and we'll see if we actually believe you?
Well, look, we've obviously got work to do on that particular front, and that's the work the Prime Minister's been doing with things like the MOU between the governments of Alberta and Canada, making sure that British Columbia is as on side as can be imagined on those things too, and making sure we're diversifying trade and exports to the United States. But when we're talking about KXL, that was approved on the Canadian side. The disruption and the unreliability you're talking about in that particular case was on the U.S. side of the border.
In that particular case, for sure it was. There were other cases as well. There's one other thing. Dominic LeBlanc tweeted today a photo of him and Janice Charette, the top negotiator, meeting with Jameson Greer, the U.S. trade representative, and agreed to sort of further talk. It doesn't really feel like the intensification of talks that Mark Carney had referred to when the 50% tariffs were announced. At the same time, we've seen the CRTC, or your government officially axing the CRTC streaming tax that the U.S. has pointed to as a very clear irritant. How do you justify making these concessions while we're still in the midst of negotiations and with the threat of new tariffs looming now, whatever it is, just 2.5 weeks away?
I would caution that just because something is wanted by the United States government doesn't mean it's not in the interests of Canada sometimes as well. And this is a great example of that. By making sure we don't proceed with this, we're keeping these things affordable for Canadians. We know affordability is a top concern for Canadians, and we want to make sure that we're meeting Canadians on that front. And that does sort of bring us back to the announcement that was made here in Alberta with this $500 million. We're making housing more affordable. We've made gasoline more affordable by suspending the excise tax. By eliminating the consumer carbon tax, we're making things more affordable. By increasing the groceries and essentials benefit, we're making things more affordable. And yeah, by not proceeding with this particular streaming tax, we're making things more affordable as well. And we're going to keep doing that. And yes, sometimes that's going to align by chance with what Donald Trump wants to, but we can't not do those things simply because that's the case. That wouldn't be particularly mature.
All right, Corey, we're going to have to leave it there. Corey Hogan, appreciate your time today. Thanks for this.
Okay, likewise.